So today I want to share with you an incident I had with my daughter that made me really think about the anxious and avoidant attachment style, and also how the incident is very representative of a lot of couples dynamic, including uh, the conflict that I have with my ex when we were still married. Um, So my name is Liang. I am a licensed psychologist based in Seattle.
My name is David. I'm a licensed psychologist in Phoenix, Arizona.
I have two daughters, a 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. And so one day, one Saturday morning, we were going to a museum here in downtown Seattle.
Can I just say this feels like story time? Like one day we were on. I love it. It makes me want to sit back and just enjoy, just sort of listen to the story.
Story time.
Story time. One
Story
day
time.
we were out on a walk.
So I was walking with my 6-year-old, just a few steps ahead of my 8-year-old and my nanny. So there were four of us. Right? So we were about to cross the street, and then I could see the light was about to turn, and I felt like, hey, I think like me and my daughter, my 6-year-old, we can cross, and I think there's a chance that my nanny and my 8-year-old can follow away, so we don't have to wait a light. But I also knew that there was a small chance that, or maybe 50% chance that they wouldn't make it and they would have to wait, and I was okay with that, right? So I crossed the street, and then sure enough, the light turned, and I think they hesitated. They didn't want to cross, so they waited on the other side of the street. And so when the light turned and they were crossing, and I could see that my 8-year-old was starting to cry. And when she came over, she was upset. Right? I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was essentially, "Hey, Dad, you left us behind. Like I felt like you were leaving us." So obviously, I was like really surprised that she had such a big emotion and strong reaction. And I bent down, I gave her a hug. It's like, hey, like I'm so sorry, like I didn't mean to do that, and I would never leave you. I love you so much. After a minute or so, like she calmed down and things were fine. And then we, went to the museum. So it was a relatively small incident, but I was very surprised by her reaction. And then the more I think about it, the more I started to think, wow, that's such a um, common interaction that I had with my ex, and I hear that a lot in my work with my patients. Right, a lot of them have relationship issues. So I have like two reflections on this event, and so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So the first reflection is about how this incident is representative of so many conflicts among couples, and how it could have turned out into an argument if you know it wasn't my daughter but like my ex, right? And the second reflection had to do with this anxious avoidant attachment style that we have come across through like pop culture or pop psychology. So the first reflection is that there were very similar incidents where this happened between me and my ex. I remember an incident. We were um, catching a boat. It was very crowded, lots of people, and I was maybe like a few steps ahead, and then we were kind of lost, and we were united when we got on the boat together. But she was like, "Hey, like you should have like stayed back, and how come you walk so fast, right?" Let's kind of revisit that incident with me and my daughter. Let's pretend that she was we were partners, and she was my girlfriend and I was the boyfriend. I think a lot of times the boyfriend would probably wonder, like, why are you so upset? I was just across the street. Like, why are you crying? Are you I think you're overreacting, right?
For
And
all
then
the boyfriends out there, don't leave your girlfriend on the other side of the street if you're crossing the street. Sorry, go
and
on, Leah.
yes, don't do that. The girlfriend would say like, hey, like, like this is like common sense. Like you should not do that, right? I was behind you. Why weren't you like looking out for me? Like, do you really care about me? Right. So, and then this could lead to an argument. And you can also imagine that if this happens maybe multiple times or in different variations of this, right? Maybe like we guys going skiing and the guy was like skiing a little bit too fast, right? Or so, and this could basically turn into an ongoing issue, right? Where the boyfriend feels the girlfriend is overreacting, and the girlfriend thinks the boyfriend is non-caring and doesn't not attentive. When I think about what happened between me and my daughter, I think the reflection was that, hey, if there's actually no person who was right or wrong, right? It was just a very uh maybe we just had like a slight different way of um, interaction, how we behave in relation to other people. And it was actually a situation where we actually can understand each other better if we actually sit down and tune into like, hey, like why are you feeling upset, right? And what were you feeling? And she told me that she felt like I was leaving her behind, and so all she wanted me was just to tell her and reassure her that like, hey, like I love you, I'm sorry, and I will do my best in the future to not do that, right? Because I know that this is important to you. um, and it just made me think about, like, of course my relation with my ex, but also like so many of the uh couples issues seems to stem from this misunderstanding and misattunement to each other. So I'll pause here and want to hear your thoughts.
Um, yeah. So, I mean, I like your focus on understanding and relationships rather than a focus on who's right and who's wrong. Um, in my experience, when couples or parents and children focus on who's right and who's wrong or blaming, sometimes that makes you feel better in the moment, in terms of like, oh, I didn't cause this. It's sort of like a self protective thing, but it doesn't actually help resolve the situation, which is to say, have both people feel like they're cared about and their needs are being met. So I really like you bringing that up. Um, and the idea that after talking about something, the goal is to have both people feel like they're seen, they're cared about, they're safe, uh, and to adjust, see what can we do in the future so that a similar situation in which one of us feels like the other one isn't there for us doesn't happen. So, yeah, I mean, I think the central question in close relationships, and this goes for parents and children, although in that case it's one way, whereas in romantic relationships it's two way, but in friendships as well, the central question is, are you there for me? Is this person there for me? And there's lots of reasons why it's really helpful in life to feel like there's somebody there for you.
Right, right. And I think it's so important to try to understand the other person's perspective and how the incident made them feel, because I think this is where sort of the golden rule about, like, treat other people as you would want to be treated, like doesn't really apply. Because right, in this case, the guy who crossed the street first, like, let's say the father, right? It's like, hey, like, I don't understand why you'd be so upset, right? If I were in your shoes, I would not, it would not bother me, right? I'll just like wait a minute and I will cross the street, right? And likewise, right, I think the daughter would feel like, how can you be so inconsiderate? If I were in your shoes, I would wait, and so that we'd be together and cross the street together, right? Why would you want to walk ahead of us and made us be separated, right?
And people get into saying, oh, this shouldn't affect you or shouldn't affect me. Um, and the reality is just, the reality is maybe it does. And I like what you're saying, that different people need different things to help them know that the other person is there for them.
Right.
And
Right.
so maybe you don't need that, right? Maybe if you were getting on a boat, you wouldn't mind if your ex at the time went ahead a little bit, but she really does mind. So the goal when you're in a close relationship with somebody is understanding what is it that they need, uh, in order to feel like and to know that I'm really there for them. What do I
Right.
need? How do we communicate that to each other in a way that doesn't involve so much, kind of anger or blaming, and then actually do that for each other.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the thing that I wanted to remind myself in this situation, right, is not to become defensive, right? Are you saying that I am not being considerate? Are you saying that I'm not acting like how most men would react? If I become defensive and feel criticized, right, I would, instead of offering empathy and actually wanting to hear about how you feel, I would actually kind of shut down. Saying that like you're overreacting is almost in a way to kind of shift the blame and not feel like I did something wrong.
Yeah, and I think, I appreciate you bringing it up because this, I think, is really common in relationships when one person perceives that the other one isn't there for them. Oftentimes that's expressed through some sort of anger or protest, or sometimes criticism. And so the person who's receiving that, who may be like you, unknowingly did something that led their partner to get hurt, might
Mhm.
feel like, hey, I didn't have any bad intentions here, and now
Right,
you're mad at me. And it can
right.
really easily lead to feeling defensive, or speaking in a way that's defensive. So from the person who feels hurt, as much as possible, if you're able to find the softer emotions, the more vulnerable emotions, for instance, I felt lonely, or I felt scared, or I'm worried that you really aren't going to be here for me in some important way.
Mhm.
That's much easier for the other person to hear than, name calling, or,
Right,
you're so bad. Um,
right.
and similarly, from the other side, if like you, Liang, it sounds like you did a wonderful job with your daughter. If you're able to respond and hear inside of maybe the criticism or the anger, hear inside of that the soft feelings that the other person is probably feeling. This
Right,
empathetic stance you talk about taking, that really goes a long way toward resolving relationship problems.
right, right. And I think with my daughter, it was so easy for me to do that, to just be with her, right? Because like I obviously I love her like so much. I love her like my daughters. I love them more than anything in the world. And also like as someone who is obviously, I'm the adult, I'm the grown up, right? So it's also easy for me to like, hey, like, doesn't matter how I'm feeling right now, like how you feel is most important, right? And I can also see how like if we are like two adults, right, that I could become very trigger, right? Like, hey, like um um, this overwhelming emotion, right? Seeing my partner being upset at me, right? Saying that like, oh, why are you walking so fast and crying, right? I could become very, I may not have that capacity to be able to offer empathy, right? To really tune into the other person, and that actually that's hard for most people, I would say, right?
Yeah, and when your partner is mad at you, that often triggers your own attachment feelings, which
Right,
is to say, your feelings that come up when the person you want to be there for you isn't there for you. And so we have the first person's feelings triggered and they get upset. Different people, respond different ways when they perceive their partner isn't there for them. Some people get upset. Some people withdraw. Um, some people do some combination or something else. Um, but in the same way, if you perceive your partner angry with you, you might fear, oh my goodness, I can't do anything right. I'm doing a bad job. They're angry at me. This isn't going to work out.
right, right,
Um,
right,
maybe they are right. Maybe I did something really bad, maybe my partner really isn't reliable and trustworthy because they're so angry with me. So, maybe I need to just withdraw. Maybe I'm the only safe place I have. I was better when I was single, right? Or what have you. So both people get into this, can get into this sort of triggered state where all of their fears about whether they're seen and the world is safe and
Mhm.
they're accepted get brought up. And what you're saying, I think, is most helpful if we can, is sort of being able to step back, observe, have some empathy for ourselves. Oh, I feel scared right now. This is hard. And also, if it's possible, have some empathy for our partner, and then have a conversation where you're trying to understand each other, but from a state when you're a little more calmed down. And sometimes that takes literally taking a break for 20 minutes or an hour or 4 hours or some time until you can sort of relate to each other in this more curious, empathic way.
Right, right. Yeah, I think the key point, well, one of the key points is to not shift into this blaming mode, right? It's like, hey, I'm not the problem, you're the problem, right? Uh, and in fact, I think that's one of the key ingredients of like repair, and also in couples therapy, right? It's like, hey, when there's no the key is understanding each other rather than pointing the finger at each other.
Mhm.
Any other final thoughts on this before I share my second reflection?
Um, don't cross the crosswalk and leave your partner on the other side. No, I mean, there is something to be said, I guess I would say, for um, and I will say this is really hard to do, for
Yeah,
trying to anticipate what might make my partner upset, right? We might have some sense. With
yeah,
that said, I have to say, being in a long-term relationship now for close to a decade, there are just so many times I've messed that up where I look back and I think, of course my partner would be upset with me doing this. It's like, but when you're going into it, you don't know the person. So,
right,
I
right,
think having a sense of humor and a real just acceptance of, I'm going to screw this up a bunch of times. It's not because I have bad intent. It's not because
exactly,
you, my partner, have bad intent. We just don't know each other. And so
exactly.
there's, yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right, right? That you are actually learning about the other person, right, when you become intimate, right? And even though, this is my daughter and she's 8 year old, right? This is actually something I discovered about her. I didn't know that she would have such a strong reaction, right? So um yeah, so just imagine, somebody you just met for like 6 months, right?
Yeah. So I'm interested to hear your other reflection as well, though.
Yeah. So the second reflection is like my first, right after this event happened, right? As a therapist, right? The first thing that came to mind was like, oh, is she anxious, anxious attached? Why is she having such a strong reaction, right, to me being just apart for, like a minute, right? And the sort of the parallel to that is like, does that mean that I am like avoidant attached? Like, am I not? Is it because I cross the street because I am somehow like avoiding intimacy? Like I wanted to be alone I want to be away from her. Like I'm afraid of being close to her. So is it right to think of it that way? And I remember sharing this with you, right? And you, I think you mentioned that, well, I wonder if your daughter is actually, that's actually a sign that she's securely attached, right? That she being upset is that indicates that she's actually, it's worried that I'm apart from her. And she was able to soothe very quickly once I reassure her, right? That's actually a sign of secure attachment, right? And so it made me wonder, like, maybe she's securely attached, and maybe I'm also securely attached because I was able to reassure her. And the more I think about it, the more I feel like, does it really even matter? Like, what kind of attachment style we had? Like, all it really mattered was that, hey, this happened, and I needed to tune into her and calm her down, like, and maybe once she's calm, she could also understand that when I cross the street, right, there's no malintention, right? There's no need to put any labels. And in fact, right, putting a label like, hey, I think you're anxious attached and I'm avoiding attached, actually could create a problem in the case that, if someone, read about attachment styles, right? Maybe through an article, maybe through something that they listen to, then they may say, hey, I think my boyfriend has avoidant attachment style, right? Or the boyfriend will think that, no, I think you're the one who's like anxiously attached, right? You're the problem, right? So it becomes like, I think labeling behaviors, so I think there's a helpful aspect, but there's a somewhat unhealthy aspect, which is like it's pathologizing maybe very universal feelings and behaviors that has nothing to do with how you were raised or whether you had trauma, right? Because if you like kind of Google, you know, anxious attachment style or avoidance attachment style, right? A lot of times they would say like, well, you have this anxious attachment style because you did not grow up in a safe environment. You felt like you did not get love. And for the avoidant, it's because like you were maybe like criticized too much and now you don't want intimacy, right? So it has this like pathologizing aspect, right, to labeling behavior anxious and avoidant.
Yeah, I mean, I think to the extent that it helped, like you said, that it helps you understand yourself and your partner, um, have empathy for yourself and your partner, and then respond in a way that's caring, that it's useful. So if understanding, boy, my partner had, you know, parents that were not ideal, which, newsflash, we all have parents that are not ideal, right? Uh, uh, Although I do want to say my parents are pretty good. Thank you, mom and dad. um, Given that they're the two of the five people who watch our videos, I want to make sure to say. Uh, but if having that in mind gives you empathy for your partner, and say like, boy, I know my partner probably gets scared at times like this, and that's the reason they acted in this way, then great, that's wonderful. Like you said, if you're using it as a, maybe the word weaponize is too strong, but you know uh, leverage in your argument to prove
Mhm.
that they're the bad one and they're the problem in the
Mhm.
relationship,
Right.
then it isn't helpful for maintaining your relationship. So yeah, I agree with you, Liang.
Yeah, I think it can be people maybe with just like a peripheral or cursory understanding of attachment style can very quickly jump to conclusion that okay, my partner is behaving this way is because they have like this, avoidant or anxious attachment style, and it's because they of their family of origin issues and they need to go to therapy because they don't, and they're not even admitting that they have this problem, right? And they become more and more frustrated, and because of this pathologizing and focusing on the other person instead of sort of the dynamic of what actually happened, what actually did the person experience.
Yeah, I'm totally aligned with you about that.
So having thought about this, right, then I feel like it's really maybe even avoidant and attachment style. It's maybe in some cases they should really use different languages. And I know that with emotional focused therapy, that which is a very effective and popular form of couples therapy, they don't use anxious and avoidant attachment style, right? They use like pursuer and withdraw, right? Uh, it illustrates the same dynamic. So the language is maybe perhaps a little bit more neutral, but even using the word pursuer and withdraw, it has some negative connotation, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, in emotion focused therapy, as you said, a couples therapy, I think they try to outline the what the progenitor Sue Johnson calls the dance. They try to outline really clearly what is happening. This person is coming towards the other person. They're trying to initiate closeness. This person, the second person, maybe feels overwhelmed and they move away from it. Um, I think maybe it would be helpful for a moment just to break down the attachment styles that you're talking about, if that's all right with you. So we essentially, as humans, we care a lot, and it's really important to our sense of well-being to have people who are there for us. And so often related to our childhood, when there's a threat to a close relationship or someone we want to be there for us, we react in certain ways to sort of help keep ourselves feeling safe.
Mhm.
So one way is sort of a heightening of nervous system activation of like, let me try to reach out for this person, get that closeness back if I pursue them to have gone away. Those, like you say, oftentimes, folks have upbringings where, the parents are sometimes available and responsive, but not always. So maybe if I try harder, if I get really anxious, I can pull them back. Um,
Mm.
what you're talking about in terms of avoidant, these are parents who are really not accessible, where the child learns, if I am going to feel safe, I'm going to have to do that on my own. So rather than moving towards and heightening nervous system reactivity, the anxiety, in other words, they move away. They sort of internally tamp down on that feeling. They avoid the contact, move back into themselves where they feel safer.
Yeah.
So in couples relationships where you're talking about, not always, but it's often plays out where one person feels insecure in the relationship. They want more soothing, and so
Mhm.
they move toward the other person, or what you were saying, pursuing
Mm.
closeness, and that the other person, maybe depending on how that pursuit is voiced, sometimes
Mm.
critically or angrily, the other person can feel overwhelmed and withdraw or pull away. So that's
Mhm.
sort of, you know just a very short primer on what these labels are.
Yeah. Thank you for that wonderful explanation. Obviously, I'm assuming that our viewership or audience are familiar with these kind of popular psychology terms. And I think the pursue and withdraw, I think it's more meant to describe behaviors, right? So, and obviously, if they're coming to therapy, right, there's something has gone wrong, right? So I think they're using that language perhaps to describe like in ways that the behaviors are actually causing problem in the relationship. And but in any relationship, right, just with me and my daughter, right, we have this dynamic. It doesn't mean that one of us is deficient in some way, right? Especially with my daughter, right? She's 8 years old, and I think I do a good job of bringing her up, raising her. I think she feels loved both by her parents, right? Even though we're divorced, right? That I have no reason to think that she has like some sort of like trauma that made her feel anxious. And I think there's research that does show that the way she reacted in that situation, right? A lot of it is just like it's biological, right? There's like some people are just predisposed to having this sense of uh you can describe it as like an anxiety or concern, right? That the person that I need, right, is away from me, and that creates some natural anxiety, right? And so I think there's a genetic or personality difference, right, between people. I think my younger daughter in the same situation, I don't think she would react the same. So I think going back to what I was saying earlier, right? I think people just have individual differences, such as extroversion and introversion, right? People are just mostly born that way. I think sometimes it's better to use languages that are non-pathologizing, right? One way to describe it is like one is like a turtle and the other is like a porcupine, right? So the turtle is the more like maybe wants to be more alone, and the porcupine like needs more affection. Or like a cactus and a fern is like another description of this individual differences. Have you heard of those terms before?
Oh, and I feel so bad for the poor porcupine who wants affection and just keeps stabbing people. That's, nobody can get close to it all at once. I feel like this is like some Zen parable or something, like the hungry ghosts who just eat and can never get enough, or the porcupine that wants love and just can't get it. I
No,
haven't heard this.
I actually have a children book that actually exactly talks about the turtle and the porcupine. They each want to hugs from other people, but they always like hurt the other person. But when a turtle and a porcupine come together, they are actually a good match, right? Because the turtle has the shell.
The porcupine just keeps hugging it, and the turtle just hides. And I don't know. I guess one thing I don't love. I mean, they're cute metaphors, and my little 1-year-old loves animals, so she'd probably like it. I guess what I don't like so much about that is there's sort of a suggestion maybe that this is the way you are, and in fact, if you're aware of your habitual or kind of unconscious or reactive ways of being in relationships, this is very changeable. And there's good research to show that when one partner really is accessible, responsive, and engaged with the other one, even if they are predisposed in some ways to feel unsafe, over time, they become more and more securely attached, that they feel safer and safer. And we can certainly change the ways that we ask for somebody to be there for us or respond when somebody reaches out for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So just like it's very important to know whether your partner is more extroverted or introverted, right? It really comes down to like what nourishes them, right? What energizes them. And so, and it would be nice to also have like a different label. Like I think introversion and extroversion now is like those are pretty neutral terms. So, maybe there will be more neutral terms that we can come up with to describe this dynamic where, one person wants more affection, the other person maybe wants more independence or alone time, right? Yeah.
Right. Or they've learned to soothe themselves in different ways.
Yeah.
And so how do you create a functional, harmonious relationship where both people's needs are met?
That's
Where the
right.
person who wants soothing from their partner gets that at the times they really need it, and the person who maybe needs some time to soothe themselves on their own gets that when they really need it.
Yeah.
My wife and I are a good example of this. She really likes alone time. I mean, I like alone time too, but um, sometimes just needs quiet or space. And at first, when we weren't communicating well about that, I might get upset. She would get upset that I wouldn't just know she needed it. And, we, using the metaphor of the dance, we were stepping on each other's toes a lot. And little by little, as we got to know each other, we learned, just like you were saying, this is nobody's fault. This is not this is not a deficiency in any way with either of us. We actually do care about each other and really want the other one to be happy. And so she's learned to really be there for me. I'm more like the porcupine, I guess, in this example. uh, or the person who moves towards, wanting comforting or to be seen or to feel safe. And I've learned to give her space. And now that we have a safer relationship, she actually comes towards me. She feels more comfortable doing that. And I sometimes want my space as well. So it's like you can be flexible and do whatever you need in the moment if you can communicate well about it.
Absolutely. All right. Any final thoughts?
Uh, I don't think so. This has been fun. I hope it's been
Well,
useful. And I guess
yeah.
in terms of all of you out there, we'd love to hear your reflections. Does this jive with your experience? What does this bring up in terms of, your time in relationships, or times when things have gone well or not gone well, or times with your kids? How is it there? It's a little uh, uh, it's not like bipolar in that way. It's sort of unipolar, where the parent is more taking care of the child's needs, but you know obviously, even as a parent, your attachment needs come up, right? So I'm really interested to hear from everybody out there as well.
Yeah. And if you have any questions or about what we've discussed, or questions about things that you encounter in your own relationship, I'd love to hear your questions, and hopefully we can answer them in a future episode.